Hey, welcome back to Right on the Money, your go-to resource for your financial future. Our guest today, Brent Ford, owner and operator of Benefit Resource Partners, and today we've been talking about his practice. We've been talking about working with the government sector employees, and what we want to dive into now, we want to dive into a little bit about some of the differences. I think a lot of folks don't really understand the different resources that the public sector has versus the private sector, and vice versa. So could you walk us through just maybe from 10,000 feet, the difference if I work for the U.S. government, what is different for me versus somebody who's just a regular non-government employee?
The government's a little different than, kind of your regular Joe has a 401k that they're working with. The government has basically three different stools just as a federal employee. They have a pension, they have Social Security, and then they also have a 401k program. So
wow,
those three stools kind of have to work in unison with one another in order to have a proper retirement. And I think a big thing that we see within the marketplace is a lot of people that signed up on the dotted line to work for the federal government kind of came in under the pretense that the government was just going to take care of them, that they didn't really need to do any planning over and above what the government provided for them.
So it'd just be on autopilot.
Yeah.
No worries, just go to work and you're good to go.
Work for 30 years, walk out, and everything is going to be just fine. And for most people, it probably would be. But we always look at our practice as a way to move somebody from an okay situation to maybe a better or best situation, to really coordinate and maximize what the federal government offers for them, so that they can get what they need from the government. Mm-hmm. And then we enhance everything on the back end that needs to be enhanced. So
now, if I'm not mistaken, you work with a variety of agencies, so it's not just one set of government employees. You work across agency.
Yeah, and that's the nice benefit about working with the federal government aggregately is all their benefit structure is the same, whether you work for the FBI or the Department of Education or the VA or the Postal Service. Their benefits are all similar or the same. There's some nuances that are a little different between the agencies, but mainly everything is exactly the same. So it's just a way to push the information to get the correct medium into the federal employee so they understand what they have. We sat down with people, and after 5 minutes they go, "Man, I've worked for the federal government for 30 years and you taught me more in 5 minutes than my entire career." And if you have that going on a rather habitual basis, what you start to find is that there's just a lack of information, credible and trustworthy information within the marketplace.
That's a fantastic point you just make, because in today's day and age, there's so much white noise, there's so much that's written in the media, there's so many talking head TV shows. So people are almost just barraged by information, and a lot of times it's misinformation or half-truths.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can't spend an hour in my car without hitting 4 or 5 or 6 different financial people on the radio giving general blanket advice to a community of people that probably doesn't understand it the best anyways. So that's where personalized advice comes in handy, whether it's our organization or any financial planning company. That's the one thing that I think everybody benefits from, just with this industry, is the ability to have advice that's catered directly to the person. And our job as a financial agency is to understand the back end point and have all the correct information to give to people so that the plan is proper, and it accomplishes the goal that it needs to accomplish.
Now there are some definite differences for that private sector worker versus the public sector employee. It's different, is it not?
It's very different. Built on a similar chassis, but the private sector doesn't have a defined benefit program. Pension programs have basically just disappeared.
They sure have.
So that's one advantage that a lot of federal employees have, but most federal employees don't know how to properly calculate their pension. They don't know when they're eligible to start receiving it, and it's meant to be a third or more of their entire retirement package. So that just as a core difference between the public and private sector is huge.
Yeah, it sounds to me, because I do know from talking to other advisors that when there's situations where a population has very specific needs and it's very different than everybody else, you can't work with somebody that just is really almost like a tourist that comes over and works with one or two people, but the rest of their practice is maybe over in the private sector, because there's too much at stake to be really kind of just a tourist, if you will.
No, absolutely. You know, and I tell a lot of my clients, a lot of the people that I've worked with, in the 8 years that I spent growing our firm, I've retired over 1,000 people from the federal government.
Wow.
So start to finish, from very early stages all the way through of completing their retirement packets, sending it into their HR department, and then basically holding their hand through the next 4 months of a little bit of stress and anxiety 1,000 times. So
1,000 times. You know, that is an amazing service that you provide right there, because I bet that 4 months, and that you're when you say the 4 months, you're talking before and after, like right at retirement time, or?
Yeah, with a federal employee, there's typically this little transition period from the time that they submit their paperwork until they actually get their pension and they get all their checks flowing in. And that's typically about 4 months, because that's how many people are pushing through the retirement system through the Office of Personnel Management. So there's a 4-month period of time that you're asking a federal employee to basically live on 70% of what they're supposed to get, sometimes 20% of what they're supposed to get. So you can imagine that causes a little stress and a little anxiety.
You know what? I bet it feels a whole lot better working with someone like you that knows the path and has done it 1,000 times.
Easy. You know, that's life, right? The more prepared you are for the things that are in front of you, the easier it's going to be to navigate. And that's our job, is to properly prepare people for this path, and then we just clear the wood piles from point A to point B.
That is awesome. Great Wisconsin reference there.
Absolutely.
You know what? So here's what we're going to do. We're going to break, and what we were going to do after the break, we're going to come back with Brent. And what we're going to do, we're going to talk about working with you. What does that look like? How do I do that? So that's coming up on Right on the Money after this break.